We'll go ahead and call the public meeting to order. This is the September 19th, 2017 special meeting. Mrs. Hoffman, could we have a roll call?
Mr. Burke?
Here.
Mr. Cahill? Ms. Kyle?
Here.
Mr. Skidmore?
Here.
Ms. Sudkamp? Ms. Cahill?
Here.
Mr. Montgomery?
Here.
Ms. Skidmore?
Here.
Ms. Pitts?
Here.
Mr. Nicely?
Here.
Ms. Fetty?
Here.
Mr. Blankenship?
All right, we have a quorum. First item on the agenda is the reports of committees, the Finance and Building Development. Mr. Montgomery, are you ready to talk about that?
Sorry, please.
The item we've got here is the Houston Road, Erlanger Road Development Plan. Are you ready to talk about it, or are we going to turn this over to Mr. Parsons? All right. See you in the audience there. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'm Jim Parsons with the law firm of Keating, Muth and Enclave, and I'm here tonight. This is really a public hearing for public comment as to the development plan for the Houston Road, Erlanger Road development area, which actually has been advertised as a public hearing for tonight. Just for a little information, the development plan is part of the adoption of the TIF district. You first have a public hearing on the development plan, and then then at the next council meeting, we'll start the process for creation of the TIF district, which would be done by ordinance. That ordinance will then include a local, what we call a local participation agreement. That local participation agreement is actually the pledge agreement. And we anticipate that in addition to the city, that the county and also PDS will join into this particular pledge of revenues with the city to promote this development area. I'm not sure there's anybody in the audience to address the citizens' comment, but I can go over the development plan just to give you a little more information about what's in it. The development plan basically identifies the area we're talking about for the development for the TIF district. And in this particular situation, there's two designated areas within the TIF district. One is what we call Zone A, which is the Erlanger Commerce Center area. And that area is subject also to the development agreement the council previously approved relative to the development of that site. Just for your information, I'm pleased to report that at the end of August, the closing on the financing for the first building closed, and so the bonds were issued and the financing came together for that particular project. So you should start seeing some real activity up there as far as the construction of the first building. And in fact, relative to that, there was an article recently about in the papers relative to the development of that site. So just be aware of the fact that project is moving forward. The development plan basically identifies the areas we're talking about, and again, one being the Erlanger Commerce Center area. The other is the othered area, so Zone E, which we're referring to as the Houston Road area. It's that area on the, I guess it's the north side, my directions might be wrong, on Houston Road, that sits in front of the Showcase Cinema sites that is probably more suitable for redevelopment. There's a lot of the businesses that have closed there. There's a lot of that property is now vacant. And when we met with staff, with the administrator and Dave Hahn and others, we looked at that area to be suitable for future development. So in addition to the Erlanger Commerce Center project, which is identified pretty clearly in the project, this particular agreement in place will allow you, as development of that other area comes together, would allow you to provide TIF incentives as needed to promote the redevelopment of that area. And that could be any project that might occur within that area that you feel worthy of some type of incentives. You can utilize the revenues that are pledged within the development, within the TIF district to promote those developments. Again, those aren't known. This really allows, if you remember, when we talked about doing the TIF district for the Erlanger Commerce Center area in addition, we also said that if the city wanted, we would do the work and basically NIR's paying the bill for this. They're doing the work to give you a little expanded TIF district that would allow you to promote redevelopment of a larger area than just the Erlanger Commerce Center area. In addition, just to remind you that there will be, in effect, two different types of pledges of revenues. The revenues to the Erlanger Commerce Center area will simply be occupational taxes. And the revenues pledged to the other area, the Houston Road area, will be occupational taxes and real property taxes. Again, the Erlanger Commerce Center area, those revenues are pledged to, if you remember, the site development and infrastructure costs needed to develop that. Those are capped. And so after assuming that, you know, as we get into the TIF district, once the capped amount is achieved and reimbursed to the developer, anything over and above that from that area will end to NIR. And then then you can actually then use the additional revenues that might be generated to promote other development in other parts of the TIF district. And so that will still be years away, but it does give you the option of using a portion of those revenues from the Erlanger Commerce Center area to promote the rest of the TIF district, and that's how the documents will be done. The development plan also identifies the reasons why the area qualifies as being a TIF district. And basically, we found that there's been a significant loss of business within the development area. There's been some abandonment of property and buildings within the development area. There's some special circumstances that have existed that kind of keeps that area from being developed. And those are the basic findings, I think, in the development plan as we've put it together. I'll be glad to answer any questions for you that you have, but that's the real purpose of the development plan, is to kind of identify the area, and identify the TIF district, identify the existing uses within the area, and then also then indicate what the plan is for redevelopment of that area. And it also, in the development plan, we have to make the provisions, indicate why the area qualifies, because the development area TIF districts has to meet 2 of 7 factors of blight. I think we have 3 or 4 in the development plan that we put together. All those findings then will also be incorporated into the actual ordinance that we'll draft and present to the city attorney and city administrator to review before this moves forward with adoption. Just for the record, the plan has been on file with the city since we advertised the public hearing. The plan has also been on file at the fiscal court clerk's office in Covington, which is a requirement of the statute relative to that. But other than that, I'll be glad to answer any questions about the process. And if there's any comments from the public on that, we can take those also.
All right, do we have any questions? Everybody clear? Okay. Thank you.
Possibly just for the record, you might want
I will
to
ask.
citizen comments. So.
Yeah. So is there any citizen comments regarding the TIF district for the cinema property? Seeing none, we'll move on.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thanks,
Thank
Jim.
you, Mayor and staff and members of council.
Thank you. All right, that is the only item on the agenda. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mrs. Kyle, second by Mrs. Fetty. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned. All right. So we'll move on to our regular council committee meeting for this evening as well. The first few items on the agenda under administration, I think are items that I would be addressing here. So if, unless somebody else has something they'd like to jump in here on, regarding the NKY Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan, I'd be happy to let someone else speak first if you'd like, but I'll be happy to go into what I plan to talk about on it. Okay? So I think there was some questioning as to why I wouldn't just go ahead and sign the same plan that we've adopted in the past. I think we've signed it at least twice previously, and I think everybody's aware that NKY mitigation plan gets renewed every 5 years. So it's still new to me, being that I've been in office for less than 3 years. It's the first time I've seen it, first time I was reviewing it. So just to preface, my decisions are in the interest of the city. The residents and the businesses here, I don't want to make any choices that are going to harm any of us in any way. As we mentioned, it's renewed every 5 years. Yeah, okay, so this is my first exposure. As the only person in the city who has the authority to sign contracts or obligate the city, I take the responsibility. Ultimately, the buck stops here to steer the city clear of financial and human resource pitfalls. I've read the resolution, the objectives, the action items. I've read FEMA's pre-disaster mitigation program. I've read the NKY Regional 2017 Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. After doing so, I couldn't find a reason why we would sign this resolution and think that you would do the same. If by not signing a document, there was no impact on the city, or by signing the document could commit the city to crippling expenses and a manpower nightmare, I would hope that you guys would do the same. But it's true, to qualify for FEMA's pre-mitigation funding, a municipality has to sign that resolution and practice the regional mitigation plan. In the last 12 years, Erlanger has never applied for or received any money from FEMA's pre-mitigation plan. I couldn't find any record either of us applying for any funding from that source. So, why sign it? Well, you know, an answer to my own question would be, we may encounter something this year. You know, there may be a reason why we would need to this year. I get that. We would need to specify that in the budget. I mean, just saying ahead of time, if we want to go ahead and do this and there's something that we want to apply for, we need to have money set aside in the budget to do that this next fiscal year. So, so what's my issue? Well, in looking out for the employees, I wondered who would be burdened with the additional responsibilities if we follow this plan. As you read the objectives and the action items, you should ask yourself who would be responsible for each one of them. As I read the objectives and action items, my concerns grew. So like, for instance, action item 1.1.1, remove debris from streams. Who's going to remove debris from streams? Our Public Works? And then, you know, it doesn't really clarify. Is that streams on private property? Is it every stream in the city? You know, we really don't own streams, so why are we going in there and cleaning out streams? The contract really, or the resolution really doesn't clarify that. Action item 1.2.3, encourage residents to have the ability to be self-sufficient for up to 72 hours in the event there is a loss of utility services. Well, I think it's a great idea, but who's going to do that? Who's going to encourage our residents to do that? Is it council? Is it Joe Christofield? Are we going to produce literature that informs people or give classes? I know it's not our intention to do that. Action item 1.4.2, develop and implement plans to clear dead and vulnerable trees near roads and power lines. State roads? City roads? You know, and the power lines? I mean, I think that would be more the responsibility of Duke and Owen Electric, not us. And with all the problems that we've had from the ash borers, I mean, gosh, that could be a full-time job for the next couple years. So, these were just a few of my questions, but then I began to be concerned about the costs that would be associated. If NKADD or FEMA said, okay, you need to start doing the things that you promised, it would be enough to bankrupt our city. Even if FEMA said, okay, here's $1 million, now go do the things that you promised, it would still bankrupt the city. I mean, there's a lot of really huge items in there. So I've heard from our city attorney, the Northern Kentucky Area Development District, and Steve Hensley of Kenton County. And they said things like, you're overthinking this. They can't force us to do any of these items. This is non-binding. The city isn't obligated to spend money on any of these items. Okay, I can understand that, but that's not what we're signing, okay? So it begged me to ask, if we don't have a pre-mitigation, let's see, hold on a second. If we don't have pre-mitigation right now that needs to take place, and we're not going to do things that we're being asked, why would we agree to this resolution? So, I mean, that's kind of, okay, getting down into the gears that were turning in my head, okay? So I think the rationale is that we don't want to be the only city that's not. I mean, that's part of it, and that makes sense, but I don't think that's a valid motivator by itself. So I want to make sure you understand, I respect our staff. I respect this council. Mr. Gatlin and I have made a couple minor revisions to the resolution that reflect the things that I've been told by NKADD and the county in the preamble. So if you've taken a look at that, there's been a couple slight changes. Basically saying that Erlanger is not obligated to pay or to advance or complete the action items on this plan. The purpose of this resolution is to qualify Erlanger for the pre-mitigation funding. If it's the desire to renew Erlanger's involvement in this plan and sign the resolution, then the proposed resolution is a worthy compromise. So on a final note, once this agreement is renewed, I'll be asking council to allocate some money in the next budget for some of these pre-mitigation grants, because some of the items truly are worthwhile in here and that we should be doing. So with that, are there any questions of me?
What kind of money are you talking?
I don't know, actually. I really don't know how much they would require as a match. I mean, we just know that there's always a match, and we would have to look into that deeper. You know, there really isn't that much detail in those action items if you've looked at it. So, yeah, I'm sorry I don't have an answer on that, Kevin, but I will try to find out. We would.
I have a question on this. I don't have enough information. I didn't read the actual mitigation plan, but my concern, does this overlap into the NIMS compliance? Because for us to be FEMA NIMS compliant, if this affects that, then it does affect our funding, because that's a FEMA assistance to firefighter grants. There's a lot of other grants that we put in for through FEMA. So my concern is not signing this means that we're no longer allowed to apply for said grants. I don't know if
That's
the mitigation plan and the NIMS compliance are two different things with FEMA, but the way FEMA works, I'm thinking they're going to interchange somewhere. And I'm a little concerned about not signing this for that reason.
It's a great point. And I don't know that answer, but what I've been told is that this does not affect anything, any kind of FEMA response or anything from FEMA. This is purely pre-mitigation of natural hazards. So what they're basically saying is we qualify for those funds by signing this. By not signing it, we don't qualify for those pre-mitigation funds.
The mitigation funding, the grants that you're talking about are separate than the firefighter assistance grants. Because if so, you're looking at costs, you're looking at SCBA's, you're looking at here, you're looking at millions of dollars that we won't have an opportunity to apply for if they're connected. And I can't answer that either. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's something, at least from our standpoint, I believe we should make
Well, I want to clarify that I do plan on signing it. I mean, so long as the council agrees,
Well, why don't you check on what he's saying first before you sign
if it's
it?
combined.
Yeah, I mean, if it's gonna cost the fire department $500,000 in grants,
I think his concern is if it's not signed.
Not signed.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not.
I got you. I'm
Yeah,
with you.
yeah.
Lord be with you.
So I plan on signing it. I guess I took one of the things that I've asked a lot of you guys, I've asked a lot of staff, you know, I've said, let's figure out how to say yes, and I've applied that to myself, and I said, what would it take for me to say yes to this? And you know, Jack. Oh, the resolution was only a, what?
No, I
No,
was saying
it
no
doesn't-
to his answer.
FEMA.
Yeah. Yeah.
The resolution is, it's a local resolution, and all they gave us was a recommended resolution. So we've made a very slight change on that.
So I guess I'm thoroughly confused now because in listening to you, I thought you were totally against signing it.
I wanted to explain where I was coming from. You know, we've talked about this for like a month.
Oh, I know.
And I
mean,
wanted to
and
make
that's
sure people
great,
knew
but
that I wasn't just dragging my heels or not doing my job.
You never do.
Nice of you to say that.
Well,
But,
it's the truth. I mean, you research everything,
Yeah.
but you do beat a horse to death. I will tell you that also.
okay.
But if you're going to sign it, I'm in agreement with that because I think you're missing something if every city, and every city has signed this agreement with the exception of Fairview, which has like 3 people. So, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
They're nice people, Patty.
Mr. Nicely?
You've got the hazard. That's material and all that, right?
It's natural hazards. So and if you look, there's a 393-page document that outlines everything from tornadoes to flooding to emerald ash borers to, plague and
That's a
locusts,
question.
pillars of salt.
We've got trucks, and especially the trains, going through hazard material. If we have a wreck out there on the train, have we got a plan?
Yes.
We do?
Oh, absolutely. Chief can address
It's
that.
but it's totally different. It's not a FEMA issue.
Right. Yeah, that wouldn't be FEMA.
No, I know that, but
You're
do
just
we
talking
have
hazardous.
something for on the city?
Pay attention.
Yes, the answer is yes, and if you're interested in that, we can talk about it outside of this meeting, or if you want to learn more about it. Right now is not necessarily the time to talk about the whole plan on railroad cars. Val?
Yes, I appreciate your concern that you take your time, figuring this out. I was just going to ask you, what is the time, what's the deadline, I guess, for signing it? Do we have time left, or?
So I asked that question, and they said, and I asked it after our last meeting, since we didn't sign it at our last meeting, and they said we have another 30 days. So
Okay.
30 days from the last council meeting, so if you do it the next council meeting, you should be fine.
Yeah, I'd just be more interested in knowing, like, what we're putting money in the budget for, what exactly that involves, because that's the part I don't understand.
Yeah, and that's, it would take some time to even, and
with numbers?
don't let me mislead you. I wouldn't try to do that without fully opening that up to council and making sure that everybody agrees on the things that we would try to apply for.
Well, I just didn't want you to sign it and then council says, hey, no, we're not going to agree to this amount, you know what I'm saying?
And council may, and that's okay.
Okay, all right,
But, if we're going to sign it, I plan to try to use it.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, in the last 12 years, I think they identified,
Well, we've
was
been
it?
blessed with.
It was like $6 million
national
here
grants.
The
locally.
county's utilized it quite a bit in the last 12 years.
yeah, $5 million over the
Right,
last
'cause
12
they had
years.
those tornadoes out in Pioneer, probably used it for that, yeah, but we've not had anything.
It's a lot of
here.
generator stuff.
Been very blessed.
Yeah, thankfully.
Yeah, very
So,
blessed.
But I think that we've got some real things that we could work for and ask for and try to get funding for.
Does it include mutual assistance with other cities and?
Some of them do, yeah. Some of them are more countywide. Let me look here.
I mean, we do that.
There's none of
anyway,
them that
probably.
have a joint city, but there is either cities or counties, or just the ad district
Right.
on the list.
Okay,
I don't know if did you ever see that? Does that look familiar at all?
yeah.
I don't know if that was widely distributed or not, but that's just all the projects, all of about 20-something
Yeah.
projects over the last 12 years.
Okay.
Anything else on that? All right, seeing none, then we'll move on to the next item, the goal review. Okay, so I just wanted to take a little bit of time, and I don't plan on spending a lot of time on this, but going through the presentation that I showed in February, probably look familiar. I made a couple of small tweaks to it, basically just checking stuff off that we've gotten done. All right, so, working together is what it's all about. Oh, that didn't come through right, did it?
Oh, no.
You get 2 checks next year.
I got 2 checks. Okay, so I think, if I remember right, one of the things was they're balancing the budget and another property tax decrease.
There it is.
There we go, good.
I don't know if you can advance from this screen now.
Okay.
Let me try
Um,
again. Let's try it
We're
again.
still working on cutting the spending from the departments. I think a lot of the departments have done well, but we've also, we have some other costs and other, I'm not picking on fire department, but they are looking at trying to purchase new apparatus this year, which is a isolated cost. So, yeah, we understand why that's not cut. Okay, let's go to the next one. Wanting to keep happy, productive, long-term employees. Still working on instituting this wellness plan that's tied to our new health insurance, and assembling a savings sharing plan. So these are going to be some items for Shannon to look further into and see if there's something that, so we're not reinventing the wheel, finding another city maybe that's used this type of plan. Thinking about solutions and figuring out how to say yes, see? Promoting single-family ownership. We are continuing to work on that, and part of the proof of that are some of the new developments that are sprouting up. We were talking with Dries earlier today. The Enclave is almost completely bought out in less than a year. 29 houses back there. And another just quick reminder on that, they were originally planning on those houses being between $275,000 to $350,000. And when they were finally all bought and built out, they range more from $350,000 to $425,000. Helping taxpayers raise their property values. Okay, so we got a report from the Area Development District here recently that said that the value of Erlanger has gone up $25 million in the last year. That's everything, businesses and everything else. We've increased in value $25 million. So that's proof that that's working. Increase the quality of life for our residents. Well, we've always done that, right? Continuing that. We can skip on. Okay, so spotlighting the businesses on our website. We're still working on that. And also having the business listing, or listing the businesses as links on our website. That's a huge benefit for them. We still don't have that yet, but it's being worked on. And then what's the other check mark there?
Oh, speaking of which, if I could interrupt, somebody just told me that the Putt-Putt just turned 50 years old. We need to honor them.
Yeah, I told her that. I have
Was
a
that
friend who
you? I
teaches
couldn't
at St.
remember.
Henry's, and her husband, student of mine years ago, he runs that putt-putt golf, and they had a celebration a couple weeks ago, I think it was, their 50th year in business, because I think he took it over from the other gentleman.
Okay.
And so I was saying to Patty, I said, remind me, we need to tell somebody to
And I would have forgotten just like
Spotlight 'em.
she would have had I not interrupted you, so I apologize.
Yeah.
Spotlight.
And they've been in that location for 50 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
I played there 50.
Thank you so much. You played there 50 years ago? You're not even 50 years old, are you?
He was 10.
Yep, a lot of these people weren't alive yet.
All right. Excellent. Thank you, Patty. Okay, and increasing the opportunities for the businesses to contribute to their community. We are getting, we've been working more, and I know Kim and Joe have been working more on getting businesses involved more with our events. I think the hiring event was a great opportunity as well, and a lot of response from the folks that were involved in that were the businesses that said, it was just nice to be able to get to know some of the other people from some of the other businesses that have been, right across the street from us for years. So yeah, that's been good. All right, we'll continue on. Find efficiencies in our services. Yes, I think all the department heads and directors are doing a great job in that. Continuing to make utilities and their maintenance affordable to everybody. Yeah. I know Duke's been working on trying to update the smart meters and things to that effect, but yeah, we're still working on that. Working with our legislature and our neighboring communities to thwart the drug epidemic. I think the work that Transitions is doing has been great, and them expanding down there, and them having the opportunity to call Erlanger home is a good sign that we're on the front end of this. And yeah, we can only hope that we're thwarting it. Chief Wilson and Chief Whittaker may say differently. All right, we'll continue on. So from the elected officials, Mrs. Kyle said welcoming new businesses, large and small, that's been happening. Listening to the concerns and making decisions that benefit a majority of the citizens. I think we've been doing a great job of that as well. That's come up multiple times here in the last few months. Mrs. Fetty said increased transparency between the city and the citizens. We've got OpenGov getting ready to be officially rolled out and available to everybody. And then coming to a resolution about our backyard chickens. We did come to a resolution. Mr. Cahill said develop a master street maintenance plan. We do have a maintenance plan. I thought about putting a check mark next to that, but it doesn't address every street in the city. I think that's what he was saying is kind of a master plan that would give people an idea of how far the streets are out before they're going to be replaced. And then the tax incentive plan. Businesses, we're going to talk about that more later this evening, and we're getting ready to update that as well. So that's exciting. Mr. Burke said to focus on our police, fire, and public works departments. I believe we are doing that. Maintaining our parks and supporting new businesses. I think we're doing that as well. Mr. Montgomery said long-term financial stability. I think we are doing a fantastic job of that. Last year, bringing in $3.2 million more than what we spent, I think is a good indicator of that. Making sure police, fire, EMS, and public works have the resources they need. I think that as well. And I know that they know that they can ask for what they need. So I don't believe we've turned anybody away. Mrs. Cahill said create a senior center with grant money. We haven't done that.
No, Ed Bailey's looking into it for me.
Good.
Talked to Ed, and he said he'll start shooting as many things as he can towards me, and hasn't come up with anything that looks really, really good with a lot of money that would take to start one up, but he is looking into it and said he would make sure that I got all the information.
We were also talking with Chief Whittaker and Assistant Chief McQuarrie the other day, and kicking around that idea. There was a plan that was brought up a while back about a new firehouse and senior center combined, so that's still out there too. So, all right. Mrs. Sedkamp said that the tax decreases, informing the people, we've done that. Merging with Ellesmere's Fire District. We did talk about Fort Mitchell, and that that really didn't pan out like we had hoped, but we are working with,
That doesn't make any sense to go with Fort Mitchell.
well, and the chief's also had conversations with Point Pleasant, and I believe he has talked with Ellesmere. You know, I think there are opportunities, and I think that as time goes on, it's going to make more and more sense. I really do. Mr. Nicely said, reduce the city's dependence on railroad contracts. I don't know that we have reduced the dependence, but we certainly are keeping it in mind and trying to work away from that. Work with the county, state to fix Stevenson Road. That as well. You know, I know it's come up in discussion quite a few times, and trying to figure out the avenue of how we get more attention on the state level. Mrs. Pitt said, make sure police, fire, EMS, and public works have the resources they need. I think we did mention that. And to tackle blight. I didn't put a check by it because it's an ongoing issue and we are still working on it, but I do think I think we've been improving. So the department heads, Mr. Bodie said adopt new financial policies. We did that. That was a huge deal this year. Director Allen said new cameras and audio in the council chambers. He's just gotten multiple bids on this here now, so starting the process of going through those. And then rolling out the new city website July 1st. That was done. Mr. Bogard said add staff to Public Works, which we have. He also said develop a long-range plan for building maintenance. So using the study that we've done, now we've got to start to work on instituting that, implementing that plan.
What is the status over there in their buildings with all the mold and everything?
The mold I wasn't as aware of.
The mold, I want to know what the status is on the building maintenance and.
Do you mean Public Works or
Public Works,
in
yes.
police? So police.
I know you got mold in police.
Yeah, okay.
This building should have been leveled.
Mr. Bogard, would you like to address that?
We have not gotten anything taken care of yet down on the public works end, everything over PD side, Central's been addressed. So.
Okay. There is still a mold issue? Okay.
Not healthy.
Right. Maybe we can talk to that company about relocating, you know, once they get this stuff wrapped up, to turn their focus down to Public Works. Okay, Chief Wilson said become fully staffed and increase training. Are you fully staffed? You know, part of the reason I put a check mark there wasn't necessarily because I don't think you are fully staffed, but I was thinking about Crescent Springs.
We actually are fully staffed right now. We don't have everybody available to work the road, but as far as numbers go, we have several in training, but we're right there.
Okay. Okay, good. Good. And then the other item that you had, you'll have to answer for me. Are we planning on hosting any trainings, statewide trainings here?
We've got a few small ones, but nothing that large scale.
Okay, good. All right, Chief Whittaker said creating a pathway to success, which he is working on. And also increasing the activity in schools like lunchtime and just raising the awareness of kids and letting them see firemen more often, firemen and women. So yeah, because of some of the staff changes here recently, that's been kind of put back on the back burner, but you know, now that there's been a couple things that have straightened themselves out, or not straightened themselves, but been straightened out, that he's going to increase that activity again. Mrs. Hoffman said to reevaluate our passport program and Real ID, which is something that we've still been continuing to talk about. It is an ongoing issue. And also the compliance review of internal procedures. That one, I'd have to ask you.
We finished it. We reviewed all of our internal procedures and then updated everything that needed updated.
So I do owe you a green check mark on that, sorry. All right, Mr. Christofield said the new city logo and branding.
All right.
We're working on it, but we've got the new logo. Kevin Burke's favorite. And the financial audit, reconciling the gas card purchases, that is actually something that they are working on. And coming up with a couple different ideas and trying to institute some different ideas on that reconcile. All right, so yeah, I don't know that we need to go through all these other things. The big point here is, trying to just lay out a plan so we're all working in the same direction. And part of the reason why I wanted to bring this up tonight is, one, let's look at the things, let's tout the things that we've gotten done. Let's refocus on the things that we have not. But then also, let's start thinking about next year. So I would like to ask council, I've already asked a lot of the leadership team, give me a couple ideas, give me 2 or 3 items that you'd like us to try to focus on this next year. Okay? Again, I'll probably be looking at trying to put something like this together again, or renewing this right around the first of the year in January or February. So if you can start to put that list together and share it with me, I'd appreciate it. All right, thank you. So the other item on here are the departmental logos. Do we have anything to share from the departments?
I don't have any.
What about fire? Anything? Okay. Public Works? Okay. Chief Wilson, are you guys planning on making any change? Yeah, I think it's similar. Okay. All right, and is there anything admin-wise, or
we just use
just
the
sticking with the basic, okay. All right, so then moving on, we've got codes, building, and zoning. Mr. Burke, Mr. Nicely,
Yes,
ready?
sir.
You ready to talk about these?
Well, yeah, we got the transient homes, Airbnb, that Mr. Gatlin is going to talk about.
I'm going to talk very briefly.
Thank you.
I was given the, next item. I was given the very dubious task of constructing an ordinance that no more than maybe 2 people agree to in this room. I think I joked yesterday when I spoke to a council person, I joked with the mayor tonight, I think there's 13 different opinions on this issue. So constructing a draft ordinance, this is truly that, just a draft. So the things that I just want to kind of bring to your attention is, number one, that this is going to be a 2-step process if council wants to move forward with this peer-to-peer short-term rentals. Number one is we have to do a text amendment. And the text amendment would be to allow it in the residential zones that we want to do this in. So that would be actually the first step of this. So to some extent, we're putting the cart before the horse by talking about the regulations, which is really what this ordinance does, which is the second phase, which is how are we going to regulate it. And I put this together by looking at other cities. There's about 3 in the Commonwealth that currently have this, have an ordinance in place. In full disclosure, PDS and the Kenton County Planning Commission are doing their own independent study. And I would anticipate in the next 6 to 12 months, they might have some type of model ordinance that's out there. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's right for everybody, but it's certainly something they're looking into. So what this ordinance does and what this regulation does is it meets what Council Member Blankenship requested, that homeownership is required, but I know there's several in this room that think that don't want to stay in one of these places if the homeowner is there. And it really is very, very thin. So all I have done here is just created a very, very loose outline to create talking points for things that I think council and staff, for that matter, need to be considering. And just, I will be brief, because really this is your all's issue. Just to give you some ideas, after I sent this first draft, I know that Matt said, hey, we've got to address parking, that's not in it. I know that the mayor's concern was, well, boy, if we limit it to just homeowners, that that's really kind of going to kill off the whole idea. And I've heard other people say, why are we doing this for just 4 or 5 people that want to do this in the community? So I'm going to turn the floor over to all of council. All this is a very rough draft, and just understand it's a 2-part process. If you all want to move forward with it, let's kind of agree to what the regulations would be, but then we're going to have to start out through a text amendment process.
First part is that Jack bails out.
Yeah.
I do.
Part 1.
Because he's not going to address.
Well, the energy over the last month of having the mayor say yes on the hazard mitigation plan, I'm worn out.
Oh, come on.
I can appreciate that. Were you the dead horse he was beating?
Looks pretty likely to me.
Okay, so is there any discussion on this? Have people had a chance to take a look at it? Mrs. Skidmore?
I have a question. Down here where it says the hosting platform, it's about 2/3 down on the page. It says an internet-based platform that generally allows an owner or a tenant to advertise the dwelling unit through a website. Is that a typo? I
No.
wouldn't think you'd ever want the tenant to be allowed to rent something to
Yeah,
somebody
no,
else.
I see your point. I mean, we would certainly clean that up. No, that's not a typo. I think the idea with that is that these websites generally are for tenants and owners to utilize. But I see your point, and we can certainly change
That'd be
that.
just like assigning your right to somebody else that
Well,
be paying their rent and they charge their person that was moving in to.
So there's a method to that madness. So several cities have allowed the tenants on a lease, the tenants on a long-term lease, to allow short-term rentals. So basically a sublease situation. So that language probably came out of one of those cities that allow that. I have not allowed that. I basically, you see the definition of host, it has to be the owner of record, but I do appreciate you caught me that I did not change the language on hosting platform. But that's certainly something that you all can discuss, is whether you would want to limit it just to the owner of the property, or whether a lessee on the property could also engage in short-term rentals. Louisville allows the lessees to do it. Louisville doesn't care. It's whoever has lease or title to that property.
I think an important part of this, I've never used Airbnb, but and Corrine, if I'm speaking for you, if I'm speaking wrong, don't hesitate to correct me on this. But I think part of something that we may want to at least note about the hosting platform would be that if, that the tenant has to be able to rate them or comment on them. I mean, that's part of the magic of making this work, is that the people who use it are able to say if they like it or not, and that's what keeps the standards high.
Like they have to fill out a profile, that way other tenants can see what kind of tenant they are, vice versa with the rental property. Yeah.
Yeah, it goes both ways.
Yes, it goes both ways. And to Jack's question, I'm still for just the homeowner, not to extend it past that.
That the homeowner has to occupy it.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
What about if it was like 15 miles away?
But I mean,
So-
I don't want to open it to like somebody renting all these houses in Erlanger, and then that's what I don't want to see.
That's what the gentleman was requesting.
Right,
That kind
I
of
know
brought
that's
this
what
all
you're
up.
requesting.
I don't like that either.
And I'm not for that. Personally, I don't know about everybody else. I just think that's a slippery slope.
Go ahead, Mrs. Fetty.
Just for clarification, section 2.0, number 1, where it says the person residing or located within 25 miles, was that kind of the way around somebody actually having to be in the house? So if the owner of the house is at least 25 miles around.
Yeah, again, and I hesitated even putting anything out there, because this is truly just a work of what you all want. And that, again, is a provision that if you did not require the homeowner to be in the property, that the homeowner should at least be that you have somebody with control over that property within 25 miles. So the idea being, if you are living in Spokane, Washington, and you buy 10 houses here in Erlanger to rent this way, you would at least have to have somebody within 25 miles that the city could contact as it relates to those properties. That provision, though, would obviously change if it was homeowner required.
Let me clarify what I was saying. Like, I think it should be the homeowner's primary address, not rental, but I don't think the homeowner has to be there when they're staying. I just want it to be the homeowner. This is just me, I don't know how to, but I want it to be the homeowner's resident, not something they're renting out. Whether they're there or not, some I've stayed in, they've been there, some I've stayed in, they haven't, but it's always been their primary residence that we've gone to. So that's what I was.
So your thought would be like a snowbird situation, like if someone goes down to Florida 3 months a year, they could rent their house out in Erlanger for that 3-month period?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, but
That
the
would
devil's
fall
in the
under our
details on that one,
That
though.
would fall in our existing.
Well, but I don't mean 3 months consecutively. I mean that they would, over that 3-month period, rent it out night by night.
Right.
Gotcha, okay.
Then they wouldn't be within the 25 miles.
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. So, but again, these are discussion points. Don't look at this. I'm glad that people are pointing out these things, but that's all this is discussion points. Because quite frankly, 2 weeks ago or a month ago when we talked about this, I didn't feel like there was a lot of consensus amongst you all as to what way you wanted to go.
Well, 25 miles, you have to realize 25 miles, if there's a real emergency, they're still a half hour away at least.
That's Sharonville. How far?
I can't make that in 25 minutes, but I don't drive that fast.
25 miles.
Yeah. Mrs. Kyle, yeah.
Not getting here.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, it says, section 4, and it says B, the host shall reside at the premises. How would you prove that you actually reside at that place? I mean, the burden of proof is probably going to be on us, and we're going to have codes go out and say, make sure these people live here. I mean, how do you do that? Because strictly speaking, I own other property in Grant County. I have mail that is sent there, bills that I pay. To me, that's not enough to prove that that's not my primary residence, but what I'm saying is people could use that.
It'd be a part of the application, so I'm sort of just winging it here, but it'd be part of the application process would be based on your driver's license.
Okay.
That the only way you're going to be able to get an application would be if your driver's license matches up, but that still doesn't really solve both of your problems, right? So I'm hearing that it might be okay if they go to Florida for 4 months. I mean, we all know you could live there for 6 months, right? If and still maintain your domicile here in Erlanger, but you're going to be, what, 1,000 miles away?
What if we,
That's pretty far.
I would rather see it be that the homeowner, this is the main residence, and I have extra rooms that I want to rent out to people that are here visiting. I think that's what a lot of people were thinking about. The people that I talked to, that's what they wanted. They wanted to rent, like maybe they have a 2-story, just rent out the upstairs. You know, they still go through the main entrance. I don't think they have a separate entrance or anything, but, you know, just rent a room or 2 out. But they actually live there, they stay there. But my point is, how are we gonna police that? It scares me because codes is so overworked now with barking dogs and all the stuff we have in foreclosure and.
Well, and Matt, you can jump in any time, but Matt thought $25 was too low, that it needs to be at least 100.
It depends on your definition of enforcement, you know. I think this is going to be a challenging thing for us to enforce, and if it does, it's going to incur a lot of cost and time. I mean, the fire department and I discussed it. You know, in this situation, it's most likely just going to be a part of the rental agreement. It'll be a separate rental agreement that'll just add in some of the caveats about making sure that the smoke detectors are functioning, making sure there is an evacuation plan, you know, and the rest. But you're correct. I mean, enforcement, I don't think there's going to be a way to enforce this until it becomes a situation where the fire department or the police have to respond and we have probable cause to look further into the property. But that's something you guys can discuss. If you want it to be enforced and be inspected by the fire department, it's going to put a strain on them. Not saying that they can't do it, but, you know, we discussed that in length. It's going to incur more costs, I think, than just a $25, and that'll be a number we'll have to, you know, come up if
I
that's.
think we do that with apartment buildings now, don't we? Go in on a regular basis to check the codes that they're up to?
We won't go in each apartment.
No, but apartment building,
Things like that, we will check, but we
okay,
won't go in each.
apartment, okay. Okay.